my first thought with like the Chinese videos was like, okay, great. I can at least now have made some money where I can be like, all right, maybe these 2 years of absolutely no money was like worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, in the back of my mind, it was like, well, I'm still kind of fucked here because like, what's the next thing I'm going to do?
So during my recent trip to New York, I had the opportunity to interview Xiaoma in person. Now, I don't think Xiaoma really needs an introduction, as he's probably the most well-known creator on YouTube that makes language learning related content. But just in case, I'll say that if you somehow manage to stumble across this video without knowing who Xiaoma is, then definitely check out Xiaoma's channel as well. Now, I decided to split up the interview into 2 parts. This is actually part 2, where we're going to talk about Xiaoma's journey to becoming a successful creator on YouTube. In part 1, which I released a couple days ago, we dove in depth into exactly how Xiaoma went about becoming fluent in Mandarin. So make sure to check that out if you're interested, but I have edited this video so that even if you only watch this one without part 1, everything will still make perfect sense. Now, finally, I want to urge all you guys to click the link in the description and sign up to my free email newsletter at matt-japan.com, because in a couple days, I'm going to be sending out a link to part 2 of all the behind the scenes footage that I filmed when I was in New York and Xiaoma and I were going around and talking to Japanese people. There are a lot of clips that we had to cut out of the main videos on our channels just in order to get the videos down to under 10 minutes. And also there's some bloopers, like when I accidentally talked to Korean people and it was really awkward, as well as just the full versions of the interactions that did make it onto our channels. So again, click that link in the description if you don't want to miss out on these clips. And with that out of the way, let's jump into the interview.
Moving on to being a creator, so when did you first start uploading YouTube videos? Because I know, like I mentioned, you have an older channel that I actually watched back in the day.
Yeah, I started making videos, I think the first video I made was when I came back from China. And because I had been like on TV and radio there, you know, just like, dude, there's a lot of like, in China as a foreigner who speaks Chinese, like it's very easy to like Chinese people are very interested in that topic. So, you know, I know in Japan there's like kind of a similar thing in Korea. So I did a little bit of that, and I like doing that. I like being on the camera, I like kind of performing. So when I got back to the US, I decided to like upload this clip of me speaking Chinese. It's like a really short, like you can still see it on my channel. And it's like the first video in that Art in Beijing channel, just blew up. And it was so cool. Like I had people messaging me being like, "Hey, dude, I saw you speaking Chinese on YouTube. It's awesome." This is like 2011, you know.
Yeah, I saw that video way back in the day.
Yeah.
It has over 1 million views, right?
Yeah,
like
something
back
like that.
then.
Yeah.
So
I was like, wow, this is great. Let me make more videos. So I made, you know, subsequent to that, I made language learning videos. I made like accent videos, but it's like sporadically. Like I was just doing it, you know, for fun, and in my spare time. You know, I went after college. It was after college I had the opportunity to go back to China to be on this TV show called which is called Chinese Bridge. So it's basically this competition where they get foreigners from all over the world to go to China and be in like this televised, like really popular Chinese competition. So I had the opportunity to do that.
And what are you competing in? Chinese ability?
In Chinese ability, yeah. Chinese with like, I've all got like this performing, there's like how well you dance, your speaking ability, all these kind of things, how well you memorize like a list of Chinese proverbs, like that kind of stuff. So I could have gone and done that. Or gone to New York and work in finance. And I chose the former, which like, looking back on it, like I don't know, it might not have been the right decision, but it also was a good decision in a lot of ways. But so I did that, and I worked in finance for 3 years in New York, and then I worked in software for probably like 3 years. So,
yeah, and so did you end up studying finance in college after you got back from China?
No, I didn't. It was very sort of spontaneous the way that I ended up finding that.
So what did you end up studying in college?
East Asian studies.
Okay, so then that seems like a pretty big shift. How?
Yeah, well, and then from that to software too.
Yeah. What's kind of the backstory behind that?
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do in college. Really, all I knew was that I liked studying Chinese and like this is great, you know. I just never connected like the idea of like being a full-time YouTuber was not. It wasn't even like I had no role model for someone who could do that. I hadn't even heard about people doing that. I was like, all right, whatever. So I was just like, oh, it's just a fun thing that I do in my spare time. But I was like, I need an actual job, you know? So I wanted to do law school. That was kind of like my plan. I was like, let me do law school, but it didn't. I just remember at the time reading all these headlines about how like being a lawyer is so shitty, and like it also just didn't seem so interesting to me. But U Chicago was like this like finance school. So like a lot of people there end up doing finance. Like so I went to this like JP Morgan recruiting event, and I didn't end up working at JP Morgan, but I met somebody who was starting up a hedge fund in New York. And he was like looking for a research analyst, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to like apply for this job?" And I didn't have any finance background, but he was like, "All right, if you want to do this project for me, we can talk about it." And then so I did the project for him, and I ended up basically like working as an intern in the senior year of college for his company. And he eventually liked my work enough to go join that company as like a research analyst, which I did, and then I spent about 3 years there. And then after that, at some point, the fund was closing down. So I kind of considered like, do I want to stay in finance or do I want to do something else? And I didn't like. I thought working in finance was interesting. Like you get to look at like a lot of different industries, and it was kind of cool. But I just didn't. Something about it was like I really always wanted to like make something. That was really kind of like I wanted to like build my own thing, my own business, or like create my own something, So I knew that I was good at programming, and I was like, maybe I should get more into this field.
Yeah, and so where did you learn how to program?
In high school, like even middle school, I was like, as soon as we got the TI 3+ calculators, like those, as soon as we got those in middle school, I was like learning how to program them, and I was like writing these math programs that I was sending to once people figured out that those calculators, you could program them to do your math homework for you, everybody was like coming to me being like, dude, I heard you wrote this like program that could do like the Pythagorean theorem and like all these other things. Could you give me that program? So I was like giving that program to a whole bunch of people. And so I knew that it was
cool. So you were mostly just self-taught, just for fun.
Yeah, right, exactly. And high school, I had this thing with some friends where we spent a bunch of time like writing. Do you know dashboard widgets? Do you know what those are?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a Mac thing, but it like goes back to like OS 10.5 or something. So we were writing these like little programs for the Mac. Me and some friends. And they got kind of popular. For me, that was like so exciting to see something that I made like be used and enjoyed by like so many people. I was like, wow, this is fucking cool. And at the time, it was actually making a little bit of money too, because like there was AdSense on like some of the widgets, and I was like, wow, dude, like I can make something that so many people enjoy and like, and that can actually make money. I was like, this is really cool. So when I was looking for a job outside of finance, I was like, maybe I should go and like do something with the software thing that I know how to do. So I did this program called App Academy, which is like a 2-month software bootcamp where you learn in 2 months all like the skills necessary to be a software developer. But the cool part about it is that you don't pay them a cent until you get a job. So basically it's like this super intense 2 or 3 month bootcamp where if you don't get a job, the program is free. So, and you pay them a percentage of your first year's salary.
Oh, and that's the whole payment.
That's the payment, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I did that, and it was awesome. And so I got a job out of that at this company called Plated, which is like a they eventually got bought by a grocery company, but by itself it was a like Blue Apron or HelloFresh, these companies where you basically get like a box of ingredients delivered to you. So it was one of the early companies doing that. They were on Shark Tank and stuff. Cool. So I worked there doing software, like doing back end and front end at this company for almost 3 years, I think. And so, but this whole time working in finance, working in software, I was doing videos on the side. Yeah. And I always really liked it. And at some point while I was working at this company, I started getting popular, not on YouTube. Eventually, it would become YouTube, but on Bilibili, which is like it's like the Chinese YouTube, right? So I was like, I wasn't really making money, but I had some savings, so I was like, this is kind of this is potentially something that I could turn into like an actual career. And I was like, wouldn't that be amazing if I could somehow have a career making videos? I was like, is that a thing? You know, but like, I was like, I don't really know if this is possible, but it felt like something that was worth trying, you know, because I was getting views on like the Chinese YouTube, so I was like, maybe it's worth trying. So I was thinking of overdoing this for like a year. I was like, I don't know if I could do this, but I had enough savings to the point where I wasn't worried about like, you know, starving or anything like that, because I had enough money where I could go for like a couple of years without needing to make so much money. So I quit to just to become a full-time like Billy-Billier.
Yeah, so when you first started doing this full-time, it was for a Chinese audience.
Yeah, 100% Chinese audience. Not just in China, but also like, because I was also posting on
Chinese
YouTube.
speaking audience.
Yeah, or like even like Chinese people living in like the U.S. Like those. So yeah.
And what kind of videos were you making at that time?
Mostly like vlogs. I was doing vlogs. Like I was, you know, showcasing stuff that was potentially interesting to a Chinese audience. I was doing that, and at some point, really my first like big break, I would say, where the videos became interesting enough to have, because like on Bilibili, it's very easy to get views if you're just a foreigner who can speak Chinese. Like it's just interesting enough where you basically can say anything and get views. So, but really the first kind of like, I would say, big break where like it was interesting enough for the point where the YouTube algorithm started recommending it to Chinese speakers around the world was one time with my friend Evan. We were in Chinatown and we saw all these stands. Like every summer in New York at some point, like May or June, they start selling durians. It's like durian season. You know what durian is? Mm-mm. It's like a giant spiky fruit that's really popular. Okay. It's originally from Southeast Asia, but it's popular. It's popular with Chinese people. I don't know if Japanese people really enjoy durian.
I'm not sure.
I guess not by your...
I'm not sure what it is.
Right, so it's a very stinky fruit.
Okay.
It's famously stinky and it has a famously repugnant odor, but it's also... when you actually eat, opinions differ on it, but it's delicious. It's like it's just, but it has a very like it smells like onion and chive, but it tastes like a banana mango. So it's just like a wild kind of wacky fruit. So so we saw these durians, and I was like to Evan, hey, you know what? Why don't we just get one of these durians, cut it up? And New York is like such a touristy place, particularly around that area. In Little Italy, we're very close to Little Italy, which is like a super, super touristy location in New York. So it was like, what if we get one of these durians, cut it up, and just give it to tourists and like film their reactions? And so we did it. We got a durian and cut it up and gave it to people, and we got some interesting reactions. People trying durian. And so I made this video in Chinese, and at first I posted it on YouTube, and like nobody really watched it. So I was like, all right, it's a bust. And then a couple weeks go by, and like it's like 100,000, 200,000 people start watching this video. I'm like, where are these people come from? You know, and it starts getting like really building up, and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool, you know. Yeah. So I started doing that with more foods, and I became like the street food guy, like you know. And for a time, I was just doing foods, Chinese foods mostly.
So giving Chinese food to a Western audience and filming that for a Chinese audience.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, and people like loved it. They were like, and I gave like the most popular video I did in that genre was this thing called Lao Gama, which is it's like the Chinese sauce. It's basically like the Chinese equivalent of like ketchup, but even more. It's like ketchup and mustard all rolled into one, and it's something that's like so popular in China. Like every Chinese family has one of these, right? So I did that, giving that to Western, and it's an incredibly delicious sauce too. So when you give it to people, they're like, wow, this is like so good. And so, like, a Chinese audience saw this video and like just like blew up, like just like I never saw views like this, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. So I kept making videos in that genre.
And at this time, were you still posting on like the same videos?
Cross-posting, yeah, exactly, posting on both. But at some point, I was like, you know, like I had heard about this, and I had been there, this Filipino restaurant in Times Square called Jollibee. And I had up till that point, I was just making like Chinese videos, not necessarily for like just the mainland Chinese audience. Like I was also making videos where like I would give like Malaysian street food to people, but like all in like Chinese language, basically. Yeah. but at some point, I was like doing this Jollibee thing, and I was like, Jollibee seems like the kind of thing where like it's such a great restaurant, and I feel like people in Times Square would have an interesting reaction to it. I wouldn't want to make this video in Chinese because Filipinos don't speak Chinese, so I'm like, what if I did this in English, maybe with Chinese subtitles, so my Chinese audience could watch it. So I just, on a whim, I was like, I don't know if like a non-Chinese audience would be interested in this type of content, but I was like, it's worth trying. So I just went and bought like a whole box of Jollibee, and I took it to Times Square, and I gave it to people, and I posted that video, and I was like, nobody really watched it, but I was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe a Filipino audience would find this somehow.
So is this still on your channel?
On YouTube,
Until that point, all the content on that channel had been in Chinese language.
Yeah, exactly. So I posted this video.
So, and I think maybe we could, just to make it extra clear,
yeah.
you had one YouTube channel called Ari in Beijing that was all English content. You talked about language learning.
Yes.
You had an entirely separate YouTube channel called XiaomaNYC, which was for a Chinese audience.
Right.
And later that went on to be like the dominant channel, the one we all know today.
Right.
So
I made this Jollibee video, and that video again didn't really get any views. But then like a week later, out of nowhere, just all of a sudden like 1 million views overnight, and I was like, fuck, what the fuck is this?
And like, what was your normal view counts at that time for most of the videos on that channel?
10K.
Okay.
Less,
So yeah, it was a big deal.
It was like, that was because for some of the Chinese ones that blew up were doing like, those would get like 300K, 400K, over like a couple weeks. Because the problem is the Chinese speaking audience on YouTube is not huge. Like, there are mainland Chinese people around the world, and there's also a mainland Chinese audience who goes over, because YouTube is blocked in China, of course, right? So there are people who watch over VPN, right? But like the biggest Chinese speaking audiences on YouTube are really like Taiwan and Malaysia, and then like a little bit of Singapore, So but outside of that, there really aren't that many Chinese speakers on YouTube. Like there's some, but it's not like a huge audience. So the views that I was getting weren't really tremendous. But then I made this Jollibee video, and I was like, oh my god, like so many Filipinos are like watching this video. I was like, holy shit, and they loved it like so much. And I was like, wow. And they were like, you gotta make more. You gotta get people like this. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is kind of cool. So I did more like Filipino street food videos, and then I did like Indonesian, and I just did like a whole like just like grab bag like different countries, and I was like going around. I was like doing it was like. It basically became like an international street food show, but like for different audiences on that channel. The only problem with that was that it just was weird, because like every week it would just be like a completely different audience of people who'd never seen or heard about my channel come and watch, and then I started doing like K-pop videos, and just like it was just like a really weird like grab mix of videos, So,
and like around how many subs did you have at this period?
I think at the peak of doing that, it was maybe like 800K, 700K, kind of that.
Okay.
That sort of range.
Pretty big.
Yeah. With that was a combination of like, the original Chinese audience, Filipinos, Indians, Indonesians, Malaysians, and then K-pop. Like I had like a little K-pop fan base too. Maybe like some Korean audience.
I see. Yeah. And I'm just curious. So like, what happened on the Bilibili end? Because Bilibili has a big audience, right?
Right, but so at some point I just stopped posting on Bilibili because the nature of my content just changed so dramatically. Like like I'm making videos like that only Filipinos would find interesting. Yeah. It just didn't make sense to post that on Bilibili. So at some point I just stopped posting there. Yeah.
And then at this point's already when you were like trying to make it full time as a creator.
Yeah.
And so where was it? Just AdSense that you were kind of living off of?
Yeah. I wasn't. It wasn't really a living. It was like no money. I was on Medicaid for many months. Because the videos where even because I was getting a lot of views in like the Philippines and like India, but these aren't like very CPM high locations. So to make like a living in New York, it wasn't really living. Like again, I was legally poor, in, you know, I was qualifying for Medicaid, and like it was it wasn't something that I I was not, like, at that point I still wasn't really happy, because I wasn't like I was like, this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
You know, like I am going viral in certain parts of the world, but it's not enough money to make a living off of. So I was like, all right, I guess at some point I'm gonna have to, like, if I don't find a way to make a living from this, I'm just gonna have to go back to software. Like, it's not
so
like, and also in China on Bilibili there wasn't any money. Like, I wasn't making money there either. So it just wasn't it just wasn't enough.
That's so interesting. So yeah, there was not too long ago, really, that it was looking like it might not work out.
Yeah, no, for a good 2 years after I quit, I was every day I would think I need to go back to software. Like, obviously it was exciting when I would see, you know, videos blow up here and there, but the constant nagging thought at the back of my mind was like, I don't really know if I can make a living doing this, you know. And I was constantly like, I was like, all right, you know, my plan B is I'm going to have to brush up and go back interviewing in software, and like, this isn't like a sustainable career.
So then what happened?
Well, then at some point I met this guy, Dave, who's still my friend. You know, today we make videos together all the time, while doing the K-pop videos. And, you know, I started talking with Dave about, like, doing, like, a kind of, like, Jakey Out or, like, Lao Shu style. Because, you know, you've seen those videos where, like, the foreigners, I had seen this series where it was, like, these foreigners pranking people with Koreans, with, like, perfect Korean. And, you know, those videos, I'd seen those videos a while back. It was just, like, a bunch of foreigners in Korea speaking, like, perfect Korean. And I was like, that's, like, I could do this with Chinese, no? So it was kind of in the back of my mind, but I guess for whatever reason I never really, like, actually went and tried to do, you know, videos like that. But I was just talking with Dave, and Dave was like, dude, why haven't you done a video like this? Like, you know, you speak such great Chinese, like this would seem like a great video to do. So I went out with Dave, and we made this video where I was just, like, walking around Chinatown, speaking to people in Chinese, and didn't even really get that cool reactions. And after we made the video, like, it was the first video I'd ever tried making like that. I saw the footage, I was like, man, this is so shitty. Like, the angles are all crappy, like, the camera's constantly out of focus, the audio sucks. I almost didn't post it, to be honest. But I showed it to Dave, and he was like, dude, just post it, man. It doesn't matter. Just fucking post it. I was like, all right, you know, I'll post it. It's gonna tank. Well, it's like, this is like the crappiest video I've ever made. But I was like, all right, I'll post it. So I posted it, you know, and the title was just like, you know, white guy speaks like perfect Chinese in Chinatown, obviously, whatever. Right, but I was like, all right, it's a crappy video. Nobody has any reactions. It's like so stupid. And I was also like, who is gonna care? I was just walking around in Chinatown, like, buying vegetables in Chinese. Like, I was like, oh, big deal, right? I was like, I do this every day. It's like not a big deal, whatever, right? So I posted that video. And then, you know, as I predicted, it didn't do well. So I was like, all right, great. Then, like, 3 weeks later, it all of a sudden starts getting, like, 100,000 views. I'm like, huh, okay, maybe there's some interest there. And then, like, another week, it's like another 1 million views. I'm like, oh, wow, like, okay, is this for real? And then, like, another week goes by, just millions and millions of views. I'm like, oh, huh, okay. For some reason, I guess people find this interesting. So, and it was so shocking to me, because I had never thought that was interesting, because for me, like, and this is one of the crazy things you learn about being a content creator, like, the stuff that's interesting to you, nobody else cares. Like, I was making vlog videos for, like, fucking 3 years, 4 years, I was like, nobody gives a shit about the vlogs. Like, I was trying to be Casey Neistat, you know? But, like, people care about Casey Neistat's life for some reason. I still don't understand it, but, like, you know, because of the way he edits, because of how he talks to people, but, like, people never gave a shit about my life, but I always thought that, like, that was cool because my life was interesting, because I'm me, and you know, like, nobody, right? But, like, what you have to realize, you have to put down your ego and be like, nobody cares about you, right? People care about the content, you know? So once I started realizing that was the point where I started going viral on YouTube, because I was like, oh, okay, it's about the content that people relate to, you know? And so that was when I was like, what do people relate to? Well, people, or Americans, because the longest time I was like, all right, I have no hope of reaching an American audience, because Americans don't care about Chinese stuff. Like, how is speaking Chinese going to be relevant to an American audience? It's not interesting, right? Like, you know, like buying like Chinese herbs. Like Americans don't know or care about Chinese herbs or Chinese holidays or like, because what I was thinking was like, how do I like introduce interesting Chinese foods or like you know, Chinese culture to an American audience which doesn't care or relate to that topic at all, right? So I was like, all right, with my Chinese abilities, I have no hope of reaching an American audience. So that's why I was like, all right, maybe let's make K-pop, maybe let's do something else to try to reach an American, you know. But it just like, at some point, it kind of like dawned on me where like, I could make this type of content. And so I was like, all right, what would Americans relate to? And I was like, you know what, like, eating like Chinese food, right? People relate to that. Like, every American's had the experience of like going into a Chinese restaurant and ordering food, but have they ever seen somebody do it in perfect Chinese, right? Like, maybe, you know, I should do that, right? And so I just made this video, like this takeout video, going around, well, not that, I don't think that was the takeout, it's just me going around, like, ordering in Chinese. And that video, I posted it, and it got like 8 million views in like an hour, like after posting it. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's kind of cool. You know, I just remember like in the car, I was filming something, you know, again with Dave, and we were going back, and like I think this was right after I posted like the nail salon video, and just like, you know, like I hadn't checked it, but like, you know, like Dave shows me, it's got again, it's just got like you know, 8 million views in like 3 hours. I think that was the nail salon video. And I was just like holy shit. And so that was the first time where I was ever really able to like at that point I was like, okay, I think this can actually be like a real living, you know, in New York City, you know. So yeah, you know, I just at that point I just made I was churning out like 3 of these Chinese surprise videos like a week, you know, for like a while. I just did that. But you know, the problem, of course, is that you can't just make the same and this is something that because the problem even after those videos went viral among an American audience, I was like, because before then I made like no money on YouTube. Right? But at that point, because CPMs in like, you know, English-speaking countries are a lot higher, I was actually able to make money. And so I was like, wow, okay, so I can make money with this type of content. But I still had this thought in the back of my mind where I was like, I've seen this pattern before, where what you do, because you could also kind of make, like I was making a little bit of money, making like, you know, Filipino or like Malaysian content. Where, you know, with lower CPM countries with massive views. Like, if you can get, like, 5 million or 10 million views in, like, a Filipino video, like, you can still make, like, you know, some amount of money, enough to just eke out, like, a full-time living on that. But the problem that I had always encountered with this type of stuff was that you can make, like, these videos, but the audience gets bored of it, you know? Like, you can go super viral in the Philippines, but, like, you can only do giving strangers Jollibee so many times, right? And once you do that, it's not enough. Like, I mean, you can't. There's only so many Filipino foods that an audience would relate to that much. Where they see that video once, it's like, oh man, this is amazing. I'm gonna watch this 10 times and share it with my grandma and all my aunties. And then the second video, you're like, oh man, this is amazing too. You know, keep working at it. Third video, like, dude, you're doing great. Fourth video, it doesn't even get recommended to you because you've already seen it and you're not gonna click on it. The fourth time, you know? So, like, it's just kind of on this inexorable downward trend, and the way that you solve that is by finding a different type of content to make, you know, and then goes up, oh my god, you're going viral in India, you know? And they're like, then your audience is no longer interested, right? And you're going viral among K-pop fans, who's the hottest member of BTS, blows up, and then, kind of goes down, right? So,
So you knew that this same pattern...
So right, as soon as I saw, my first thought with, like, the Chinese videos was like, okay, great, I can at least now have made some money where I can be like, all right, maybe these 2 years of absolutely no money was worth it. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, it was like, well, I'm still kind of fucked here because I need like, what's the next thing I'm gonna do? Like, when I saw those videos blow up, I was, on the one hand, I was like, this is great, On the other, I was like, I know this is not sustainable. There's only so many of these videos I can make. And I did. I kept making those videos. But again, you just see it. It's just like less and less interested, right? And so I was like, great, So and then so I was in this down because that's great, right? When you make these viral videos that everybody watches, you're like, oh my god, you're like on top of the world, like everybody's like messaging you, being like, dude, this is amazing, like you're just, doing great, but then the kind of like the YouTube depression starts in. Where like, okay, well, you guys want more of this content? I'll make it, and you make it, but then views start going down because like again, it's like white guy speaks Chinese, that's awesome, but like white guy speaks Chinese second time, great, white guy speaks Chinese third time, keep at it, white guy speaks Chinese number 4, like, dude, this is great, but like, I've already seen white guys speaking Chinese, so it's like, what else can you do, right? So it just kind of like, and so I was on this like YouTube kind of like depression spiral where I was like, oh, I'm fucked, like I've like peaked, what do I do? Like, and then I was in this. And I was right in that depression spiral when COVID hits, and because I had just been making like these Chinese surprise videos for a while. And then COVID hits, and I was like, well, that's great. Now...
was that like, oh, this is the final blow? Or
yeah, it was like, this is the final blow. So, I was like, I'm fucked. This is great. Yeah. Not only is the audience bored of the Chinese surprise content, but also... I can't make it anymore because of COVID. Mm-hmm. Everybody's wearing masks. Nobody's outside in the streets, especially Chinese people, which, to the huge credit of, like, the Chinese community in New York City, I mean, it's so fucked up. The way that, like, the media treated that situation where, like, everyone was, like, blaming China. Nobody's going to Chinatown. It was like a fucking dark mirror to me when I was seeing how the media was covering like the Chinese coronavirus, but meantime, Chinese people in New York City were like the most COVID conscientious, wearing masks in like fucking January. Dude, January, when every single other American in like the United States, including New York, nobody cared about this thing, right? But anyway, that's just kind of like a separate rant. But my point was like I could no longer make this type of video. Like physically, I wasn't able to do it, and also the audience wasn't interested in it. So I was like, all right, I'm fucked as a creator. what do I do, right? So I started like busting out the old coding books. I was like, all right, well,
to that extent.
Yeah, and so I was like, all right, well, I guess I have this time indoors. But at that point, though, I had some success with the Chinese videos, where and also like monetary success too, where to the point where I was like, all right, now I have like this proof of concept where I can actually make money on YouTube.
Yeah, it's possible.
Right, it's possible. So I was like, maybe there's like another way to do this. So I started because I didn't want to give up, because I was like, I could still this got to be like, so I didn't want to give up, right? And so I was like, all right, I guess I'm gonna have to go back and hunker down and make some other type of content. And like do something experimental. So I was like, what if I just went and learned another language? I'm good at it. I like doing it. So I was like, all right, let's see if I can learn Spanish. And so I did like this like thing where I was like, all right, let's hunker down. Let's just spend the next 2 months, COVID time, in my apartment, learning Spanish. I found like some other person who could help edit my videos in Mexico who spoke Spanish and English. So I was like, let me just see if I could just learn like, because I always had this fantasy of like 0 to 60. How fast could you, if you just did that, right? So I was like, let's just learn Spanish. Spend like 8 hours a day learning Spanish. And so I did that. And I basically wasted 2 months of my life on content that nobody watched. And it was like, I was like, oh man, it's gonna be great, like 0 to 60. But like, they're like some of like the least viewed videos on my channel. Like the Spanish experiment videos. Yeah, just like, nobody was interested.
What about did you try to reach a Spanish speaking audience?
Not initially, because at some point what I was thinking was because that was part of my initial plan. I was like, all right, well, maybe a Spanish-speaking audience would find it interesting, because that's also like a big population on YouTube. Like, maybe I could reach that audience too somehow. So I was making Spanish videos, and my initial plan was like, all right, let me learn Spanish, and then I'm going to go speak to people in Spanish in Mexico or in Spanish-speaking parts of New York or whatever. And so I just did that, but like it just wasn't like nobody. Like I was like, fuck, man, nobody's interested. And so at that point too, I was starting to get like super depressed, and I was like breaking out the coding books again. And I was like, shit, let me go back and like do this like coding stuff. But so at some point, what I did was I was like, maybe the Spanish-speaking audience would be interested in my Chinese videos in Spanish.
Yeah. So
I subbed those into Spanish, and I posted them on a Spanish channel, which of course got no views. But I did like a little bit of advertising. Like I was like because I had some Spanish speakers from the Spanish videos that I made on my XiaomaNYC channel. I was like, hey, you guys can check out my Spanish channel over here. But it didn't really like blow up, so I was like, fuck, whatever. Like, man, this is shit. Like, being a YouTuber sucks. I hate this. So I posted those videos, and it got no views. And then I kept like making content on my other YouTube channel. I was like, there's got to be something that's gonna work. And I just kept trying to experiment, because I was like, I could do something there. Like I could do something.
Yeah.
And so I kept kind of experimenting, and but at some point, like literally months down, like 3 months later, like I started getting all these messages on Instagram in Spanish, and I was like, what? Why all of a sudden do I have like 20 messages a day, DMs in Spanish on Instagram? I was like, where? And then I was like, what's going on? And then I like look at the Spanish channel, and it's getting millions of views on these videos. I'm like, what the fuck? What is going on here? And so I started doing this thing where I started turning all my videos into Spanish, the Chinese videos, because I had built up like this library of Chinese content. So I was like, all right, let me try putting these videos into Spanish. And so I started growing like a Spanish audience, Spanish-speaking audience, doing that, but then at the same time, because New York was kind of like opening up a little bit, and I started experimenting with different languages, and at some point I had some success with like a Korean video where I learned Korean in 24 hours, and then went out and spoke to people with Korean, and like it didn't go super viral, but it did like decently well, and I was like, all right, you know what, this is kind of like a more sustainable thing where I could do things with different languages in a way that's more sustainable and interesting for an audience, in a way that also like financially makes sense as well, where you're not constantly switching countries every video. You have not switching countries in the sense of like going to a different country, where you could have, and there's people who travel all over the world, go to different countries. I don't mean that. I mean a channel where you have a different country, completely different country's audience for each video that you make. That's what I had been doing, but that's not a sustainable strategy for a YouTube channel. So so I was like, all right, like let me see what I can do that's interesting for like an English-speaking audience, and also a Spanish-speaking audience, and now it's starting a Japanese-speaking audience.
Yeah, and I'll say that the other day I was spontaneously recommended one of your videos in Japanese from the Japanese channel on my immersion Japanese YouTube channel, where I never watch English content, so it's taken off. Yeah.
So I just started doing that, and now I'm in this place where like I don't know what I would even describe my channel as anymore, but it's I do kind of want to keep the focus on like languages and cultures too. It's always something I've been passionate about and interested in. But obviously like with YouTube, you constantly need to be like experimenting with new stuff. You constantly need to be making new and interesting content, and you can't. The second you start doing the same thing too much over again, the audience gets bored. With the exception of like certain people, like I don't know how, but like Casey Neistat's like, hey guys, like I'm on a toilet today. It's like let's do like a fast edit, and no knock to his videos, they're amazing, right? And I watch them too, but I've always been like so jealous of the way that like he just like talks about his life and like million views, 2 million views, 2 million views, you know? And you can do that on a daily basis, right? But that's the kind of like I'm nowhere near that type of YouTuber, or like the YouTubers who make like the videos where it's like mukbang, like eating like pounds of noodles, right? You know, that kind of stuff where, again, you're kind of making like the same content over and over again, but it's just like the food is different, you know? So it's like, but that works.
Yeah.
You know, and it works for the audience, and like it's a very sustainable, you know, channel.
Maybe
right?
not for your health, but yeah. For
right, exactly. Although some guys like Zach Choi, you know this guy? He's like he's like probably one of the top ASMR people, but it's just like he stays so slim despite like eating enormous quantities of food. It's very impressive. But but I'm definitely like not at the level of those YouTubers, but you know, I have at this point, like, I'm very fortunate that I found like a, you know, a more sustainable content strategy where I don't have to be like switching like countries every couple of weeks, you know. So
yeah, and I mean, I think as well, like even if you're kind of moving on now from the strictly like speaking Chinese in Chinatown, like what you did with that has such a big impact on YouTube as a whole. Like for me, whenever I mention that I make videos related to language learning, like whether I'm at the dentist or I'm at the bank, people are always like, "Oh, have you seen that one guy who's speaks perfect Chinese in Chinatown? Is that what you do?" And so and like walking with you outside of New York and seeing you get recognized like once an hour, like that's I think you really achieved something there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I do think that like I'm super grateful that, like, obviously, you know, to do this full time, you do have to think about it financially. You do have to think about it from a perspective, how can I make sustainable content that I can make a living off of? But I am super grateful that what I did with that is like this body of work that I can look back at and be really proud of, you know, and say, because like the amount of people that I get all the time being like, "Hey dude, like, you know, I saw your videos, like, and it really inspired me to want to go and learn like another language," or like, you know, people were like, well, like the Fujianese videos were like, I didn't even learn to speak that much Fujianese, but the amount of people who contacted me being like, "Dude, like it really means so much to me that like you spoke my family's language, you know, this language that like nobody like outside of that community had ever even heard about this particular dialect, you know, that's like people in Chinatown speak," and then to have people contact me being like, you know, it like really means so much to me to see you speak that and like promote this language on your channel, you know, that to me, like, that is like so touching, and that's the kind of thing where like that makes me feel like I want to do this for like, you know, unexplored languages and dialects, and it made me want to go to Mexico and, you know, live in like a Mayan village and speak to, and to this day it's one of the videos that I'm most proud of, you know, even though like not that many people watched it, but I was just so excited to go there and have the experience to like live with them and really explore their culture and learn their language, and you know, now I'm learning Navajo, and you know, we go to Arizona and live with the Diné people and you know, speak to them in their language and like learn about their culture and their tribe and the people, and like that's the kind of thing where I just love, like, I love being able to like do something where I can like help, you know, like showcase some like cultures that are not really like appreciated by you know, an audience outside of that like particular culture, and it really always makes me feel amazing to be able to do that, you know?
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, yeah, it's been totally awesome to hear this story. That I had no idea about how much kind of led up to where you are today.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people like just look at it and be like, "Oh, like obviously, like duh, of course you would make that video," you know? But like, I have been making Chinese content for literally like a decade before anybody cared, like anybody English speaking knew that I existed, right? Like, you know, and it's a lot really leads up to it, right? And I read somewhere one time that like really the best way to make content is you make content that seems so simple that somebody watching it is like, I could have made that, you know, or I could have thought of that idea, right? But in reality, there's so much thought that goes before it, like, and so much months and years of experimentation that goes into something before you can actually really figure out some type of content that's interesting, that people enjoy watching, you know?
Yeah, and to hear all the tinkering that went into it, where like you mentioned, you really can't predict what's going to hit with the YouTube window. No one can.
No idea.
So that's why another thing that I've heard that seems to be really applicable in your experiences is keep tinkering, keep actually trying things.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then that's how you're going to kind of stumble across the thing that's going to hit.
Yeah, you just gotta take a shotgun approach and try as much as possible, and also never worry like if your video sucks. Like, it's fine if it sucks, because the worst part if it sucks is that nobody's gonna watch it. Like YouTube's not gonna promote it if it sucks. You know, like that's like whenever I post a video and I'm like, is this bad? I'm like, I guess I don't really care, because if it's bad, then YouTube just isn't going to promote it, and nobody's going to even know that it's bad because they won't have watched it, because YouTube won't have promoted it. So I'm like, I have nothing to worry about.
It's like if YouTube promotes it, everyone watches it. By definition, it was a success.
And by bad, I guess I don't mean like bad in the sense of like it could be like there's people who make content that's not a niche that's particularly broad. Like you could make videos about like here's a great example. If you are a person who makes videos where you teach like the Navajo language, right? Like that's not bad content, right? And you can be the best teacher of the Navajo language in the world, but your audience is limited.
Yeah.
You can only reach so many people, because there's a very small number of people that are learning Navajo, right? Just the same way that if you're making Chinese content on YouTube, there's only a certain, like you can make the best Chinese video in the entire world, but there's only a certain amount of people you can reach, because there's only so many Chinese people who can use VPNs to watch YouTube, or who like live in America, right? Or other countries. So I guess what I mean is like even if you make a video that's like cringy or awful, and I've made so many horrible. If you go back and look at my channel, like there's so many videos where like I would go back and watch it and be like, this is terrible. Like why would I ever make this video? Like even I would go back and look at some like the Chinese vlogs that I made. I'm just like, oh, this is so terrible. Like the way, like this just sucks. But yeah, you know, it's this kind of thing where you just got to do it. You know, if you really like want to, if you want to experiment, you want to be able to really make it into something that you can turn into like a sustainable career.
Like you have like probably I think like hundreds, like maybe 500 plus videos on that channel. So goes to show. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, I think we covered everything that I was hoping we'd get to cover. Anything else you want to tell the audience?
No, I mean, I guess go subscribe to Matt's channel, because he's awesome dude.
Thanks so much. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone who watched the whole thing, and see you guys in the next one.
See you guys.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed part 2 of the interview. Just a reminder, there's also part 1 where Xiaoma and I talk about exactly how Xiaoma went about learning Mandarin. Also, again, make sure to sign up to my email newsletter at mattversjapan.com in order to get all the behind the scenes footage that I'm going to be sending out in a couple days. And finally, if you're learning a language and you want to reach a high level of fluency like I have in Japanese or Xiaoma has in Mandarin, then I highly recommend checking out refold.la, where we have a comprehensive roadmap that walks you through exactly how to use immersion to master a foreign language. Over at the Refold website, you'll also find a link to our free Discord community, as well as the Refold Patreon, where we have a lot of exclusive content such as Q&A videos and live streams and even more. So check that out if that interests you. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you guys in the next one.